Before we get into the video, I thought I'd just mention that we actually made it past the halfway point for our GoFundMe. We still have a long way to go, so if you can, head to the link in the description to either donate yourself, nothing is too small, or to share it with other people. Bills are looming and we're still actively trying to get out of here. Thanks everyone, and thanks for getting me to 500 subs. Now anyway, on with the video. Hey there, stars! You know that feeling when you really want something to be better than it is, but it's really just not? Yeah, that's a vibe I'm getting when I'm looking back here at the power of the Prime's Dinobots. I honestly went into this thinking, oh, the individual robots aren't that bad, actually. Evidently, I was lying to myself a little. But let's just dive into it, starting with the best part of the set, Slash. Now in robot mode, Slash's aesthetic appeal is readily apparent. She really nails the G1 Dinobot aesthetic. Flawlessly. Now as a small disclaimer, the dagger I have her wielding here is actually from a third-party upgrade kit for Cybertron Defense Hotshot. But regardless, she did need a weapon of some sort. Now when it comes to her posability, it really isn't very much to write home about, but she's a Legends class figure, so what really matters is if she has articulation enough to be a fun desk toy. And you know what? I think she does. And you know what else? Her transformation is quick and fun. Now the resulting Raptor mode is an adorable little addition to the Dinobot team, and like the robot mode, fits in perfectly with them. Now, admittedly, the Raptor isn't very dynamic. The posability is mostly some basic leg articulation that's only useful in some areas, the arms moving back and forth, and an opening jaw. But like I said before, she just needs enough to be a fun desk toy. And she most certainly has that. And next on our chopping block is Swoop. And you know, for the most part, he's fine aesthetically. I always love a flyboy, and the cartoon blues on his chest really help him stand out from his teammates. It's a bit of a weird choice to have him be the one that comes with his sword, but not for Grimlock, given it always felt like Swoop was much more of a ranged fighter. But, you know, I digress. Aesthetically, he pulls it off, even if he does look a little spindly. When it comes to Swoop's posability, he's got a nice thigh swivel, though his feet are admittedly very floppy and wibbly. He has some decent knees despite this, and while he does have a decent waist, you have to actively lift up his chest armor / Pteranodon head to get access to it. And while he's got the okay-ish arms of just about any Combiner Wars Deluxe, his head feels a bit restricted in motion. At least when it comes to looking up. At least without lifting the Pteranodon head as with the waist. But unlike some of the others, you can still get him into at least a couple of more dynamic poses. And his transformation is still relatively simple, all of them really are, but here we go. resulting Pteranodon doesn't do much to harm the original G1 design, if we're being honest. It's fine, it looks fairly decent, and it's a fun toy to toy around with. But it really does fall into the same bird trap I mentioned the Aerators falling into in that video for the most part. There's not that much posing you can do with an avian animal. At least not without a stand. If you just need a swoop, you can't really go wrong with the Combiner Wars one, but I'm gonna be honest, if all you collect is swoops... Well, I mean, to each their own, but just Pteranodons? Nothing else? Like, not even Grimlock? Mega Dinobot must have been a really tough pill for you to swallow if that's the case. Anyway, now for the next 3 bots, I'm going to go through all of their aesthetics first, then use Slug to demonstrate their posability, since it's about the same before we move on to Grimlock. Now, starting with Sludge's aesthetics, you know, he would otherwise look alright proportionately, but that body kibble from Dinosaur Mode forming those wing shapes looks extremely out of place being so low on his torso, and it really does ruin his overall aesthetic. And his overall look when compared to his Generation 1 counterpart. And while the stickers are cute and all, I just have no faith they're gonna stick long term. Now when we get to Snarl, turns out Snarl is actually pretty much perfect and can do no wrong. Okay, that's a lie. His tail wings can get a little bit in the way of his posability, and both he and Sludge have slightly better heads than what Slug has. He's a pretty cool dude, though. And when it comes to Slug, I do like him. His aesthetics are really fun, and I've always preferred the black helmet design to the red one from the cartoon. When it comes to their posability as displayed by Slug, they've got a solid waist, decent legs, though no ankle articulation, which we've largely been spoiled by with more modern toys. Decent head movement, well, the others have decent head movement, while Slug is a little restricted by his cute little Tricera hoodie. So you can get some pretty decent movement out of them overall. Now when it comes to these three's transformations, they do all give a bit more of a unique experience, at least compared to Combiner Wars vehicles for the most part. Articulation for these three in Beast Mode is really about what you'd expect, which is to say, non-existent and extremely bloggy. But I mean, unless you're Creative Beast Studios... Yeah, I mean, what else are you gonna expect from a bunch of herbivorous dinosaurs? Now, aesthetically, Slug is basically exactly how I had expected. A slightly updated beast mode that adds just a little character. The same can be said for Snarl and Sludge. But now, let's get on to the main event. On to the Big Mac Daddy of the team, on to Grimlock! Now looking at Grim's aesthetics in robot mode first, he's a bit thin at the waist and legs, honestly. The height seems on point, but the waist and legs just feel all off and disproportionate. The rest of his aesthetics do work, despite his lack of sword. Although Volcanicus' crotch plate does kind of just hang out back there too. And the back kibble wings also feel just a bit undersized compared to the silhouette I'm used to them having for Grimlock. Now, when it comes to the posability, he's got some solid knees, expected leg movement, though it is very stiff, and a nice waist, although his waist does require you move that Volcanicus crotch plate to access it. While he's got decent arm rotation and bicep swivels, the hollowness of his arms is revealed all too quickly, and while he's got a ball-jointed head, his up and down movement is quite limited and restricted. You can get him into maybe around 3 poses if I'm being honest. Though his transformation is simple enough, I guess. Aesthetically, the resulting dinosaur mode is, well, it's okay for a cartoonish robot T-Rex. It's a very retro robot dinosaur, and I don't necessarily hate it. Despite the thickness of the tail, the proportions here are pulled off much better than the proportions in robot mode, in my opinion. And while he is the most posable of the Power of the Prime's Dinobots in dinosaur mode, if we're being honest with ourselves, that's kind of like being the world's tallest hobbit, isn't it? So, I guess if you don't have any other options for a Grimlock, which seems pretty unlikely right now, I'd pick him up, but otherwise, I'd probably avoid him now. And now for the part we've all been dreading, bringing these 5 bots together into a beast of machinery, an utter abomination, the thing you do not tell your grandmother about, Power of the Prime's Volcanicus! theory, Volcanicus is cool, but in practice it all falls apart once you combine his arms. The arm modes of the Dinobots are extremely spindly and not really capable of helping support their own weight in the combined mode. And in the case of Swoop, he has a hard time even sticking together in arm mode. And also really doesn't like to hold his combiner hand in place. Also unsure on if the crotch plate should be bent down this far or put back up more. Probably the latter if I'm honest, but really, the bottom half of Volcanicus would be fine with just some more support for the legs. The top half, though, yeah, those combiner ports being on the T-Rex form's legs just really does not work. Because there's no real solid way to peg them into place, and on top of that, the hollowness of those areas make them extremely droopy, especially given the place they're intending the bots to be secured to. It's an extremely flimsy piece of kibble there. But when it comes to the positives, I do love the idea of Volcanicus, and I feel like at a larger price point, they could actually be quite good. And I do love the combined mode head sculpt. But overall, I feel like Grimlock's flaws bring down the entire combiner. It feels like Volcanicus was used to get the baseline models of Beast former limb bots off the ground, without paying much mind to how stable it'd all be when combined to the Grimlock torso. So do I think you should go for the power of the Prime's Dinobots? To be real with you, I absolutely do not. Just go and pick up Slash, and then get the other Dinobots either from the Studio Series or from various third-party options out there. While I do like this guy, and I wouldn't give him up for the world, he is not a good toy. You should absolutely avoid this toy at all costs. Do not tell your grandma about this guy, seriously. She'd be disappointed in you. My grandma's disappointed in me for owning this.